So all of these lies started coming out, but we didn't know that she had told the royal family so many porcupines.
What Samantha just said about Meghan Markle is truly shocking. For years, her comments about Meghan Markle have sparked some of the most heated debates across the internet, with people arguing over timelines, memories, and moments that don't always seem to line up. And while none of these claims have ever been proven, the way they continue circling back into the public spotlight has created a mystery that only grows louder with time. What makes it even more unsettling is how certain details shared long before Meghan's rise to global fame are now being re-examined by fans, journalists, and online communities searching for answers. It's the kind of situation where the more you look, the stranger it gets, because every rumor leads to another question, and every conflicting detail feels like a thread pulling at the edges of a very carefully woven story. The moment you start looking closer at any long-running public mystery, you notice something interesting. It never begins with a crowd. It begins with one person questioning something everyone else accepted without a second thought. And that's exactly how the online conversation surrounding Meghan Markle's early life took root. It didn't erupt suddenly or leap out of a headline. Instead, it grew slowly, almost quietly, ignited by comments that Samantha Markle shared years before Meghan became one of the most talked about figures on the planet. What kept those early remarks alive wasn't volume or drama, but timing. Fans today often revisit the interviews Samantha gave long before Meghan's marriage, pointing out how unusual it is that her statements didn't change over the years. Online communities latched onto that consistency, and eventually, people began comparing those old claims to later public details. Not because Samantha proved anything, but because her perspective lingered, refusing to fade the way most pre-fame family chatter does. Naturally, once Meghan's life shifted into global attention, every piece of her story became magnified. Little details that would normally go unnoticed, school years, acting milestones, interviews, were suddenly under scrutiny by fans who love untangling hidden threads in celebrity narratives. And as those threads twisted through countless discussions, the earliest spark, the Samantha element, kept getting dragged back into the conversation. People online argue about why that happened. Some say it's because her tone felt unusually confident. Others suggest it's because she spoke before fame created pressure or narrative control. But whatever the reason, Samantha's voice, right or wrong, became the first reference point for a much bigger puzzle. And once people start pulling at a puzzle piece, they rarely stop. And that's where the next phase of the story takes shape, when one voice turns into many. And the speculation expands beyond family commentary into a much broader debate about timelines, memories, and the contradictions people think they've found. That shift from a single voice to a swarm of curiosity is where everything begins to accelerate. Once Samantha's perspective resurfaced in countless online forums, people started digging into old interviews, personal accounts, and family comments, trying to map the early years of Meghan Markle's life the way you'd map a mystery novel. And this is where Thomas Markle enters the conversation, not as a definitive source, but as another individual whose comments fueled ongoing public debate. His past interviews, scattered over several years, became a kind of second reference point online. Again, none of this confirms anything. It only widened the conversation. Fans noticed moments where Thomas's recollections didn't perfectly align with public timelines or widely accepted milestones, and suddenly, the internet treated these gaps like clues. Family disagreements, something that happens in nearly every household, were reinterpreted as pieces of a larger puzzle. What makes it even more complicated is how Meghan's rise to international fame created an environment where every tiny inconsistency, every unclear memory, and every emotional statement from family members ended up amplified far beyond its original intent. Someone mentions a date in one interview, a different memory in another, and suddenly these human inconsistencies transform into evidence for people digging for patterns. Online communities thrive on these contradictions. They pick them apart, analyze them, and compare them with public information, often creating entire timelines in attempts to make sense of it all. And that's when the situation stops feeling personal and starts becoming a phenomenon. Because at that moment, the discussion is no longer about a father or a sister. It's about a narrative that people believe doesn't fully match the public record. Whether those mismatches mean anything or not is impossible to know. But what they did do was open the door to the next major spark that threw this entire discussion back into the spotlight. An unexpected piece of media from the 1990s that some fans claim contradicts the most accepted part of Meghan's public identity. And that's where the conversation expands from emotional family interviews to something that feels more like a collective investigation. Once people began questioning memories and dates, they started examining Meghan's public timeline with a level of scrutiny usually reserved for historical research or unsolved mysteries. It wasn't about doubting her achievements or her rise to fame. It was about fans noticing moments in her stories that, to them, didn't align perfectly with widely reported milestones. This stage of the discussion grew rapidly because celebrities rarely reveal every detail of their early lives, leaving gaps that fans love to fill. Reported school years, acting roles, early jobs, everything became material for theorists dissecting the Meghan Markle narrative. And naturally, when people piece timelines together based on interviews filmed years apart, slight inconsistencies appeared. In any normal life story, nobody would care. People forget dates. People remember childhood differently. People misquote themselves in interviews. But when someone is married into royalty, every sentence gets replayed, reviewed, and reanalyzed. And that's exactly what fueled this next wave of speculation. Online forums began compiling unofficial timeline charts, side-by-side lists of public milestones compared with comments from Samantha and Thomas. The intention wasn't necessarily malicious. Many people simply enjoy solving puzzles. But the outcome was a growing sense among some viewers that the timeline didn't feel as straightforward as traditional celebrity biographies. What made it even more compelling for online communities was the emotional contrast. Official stories present Meghan's early life as a steady progression toward her acting career and later royal role. Meanwhile, the speculative narratives floating on social platforms painted a different picture, one shaped by interpretations, assumptions, and unverified theories. These two versions clashed, fueling even more debate. This contrast set the perfect stage for the moment when a single resurfaced magazine page would ignite the most dramatic surge of speculation yet, because suddenly, fans weren't just comparing memories, they were comparing printed ages. And this is the moment everything online shifted from quiet curiosity to widespread debate. When fans rediscovered a 1997 issue of 17 magazine featuring a brief mention of Meghan Markle, with an age many interpreted as inconsistent with her official biography, the conversation exploded across social media. To be clear, this single page doesn't confirm anything. Old magazines are notoriously prone to misprints, mislabeling, and editorial errors. But that didn't stop it from becoming the centerpiece of thousands of threads, videos, and discussions. What fascinated people wasn't the page itself, but the timing. It was published long before Meghan became famous, decades before anyone had a reason to care about her personal timeline. To fans, that made it feel like a neutral artifact, untouched by later publicity or narrative management. The fact that the magazine listed an age older than her widely accepted birth year instantly became a talking point that spread like wildfire. Some online users claimed this was the missing puzzle piece that strengthened earlier doubts raised by Samantha's comments and Thomas's interviews. Others argued that it was nothing more than a clerical error, a common issue in teen magazines from that era. But the very existence of two competing interpretations made the story irresistible to mystery-loving communities. People began analyzing the magazine layout, comparing it with other pages, looking for patterns or similar inconsistencies. Some even contacted libraries, archives, or collectors to verify that the page was authentic. And once multiple people confirmed the page existed in physical copies, the speculation gained even more momentum. But the real catalyst wasn't the printed age. It was what that age symbolized in the larger conversation, a disconnect between the official timeline and the way certain documents were being interpreted by the public. And once you introduce the idea of two possible versions of a timeline, you create a narrative that takes on a life of its own, one that continues growing with every new detail people uncover. That magazine page wasn't the conclusion. It was the beginning of a deeper divide between two competing public narratives. On one side, you have the widely accepted official biography of Meghan Markle, repeated in countless reputable outlets, public records, and formal documents. It's consistent, polished, and supported by the institutions that handle such information. On the other side, you have a speculative online interpretation pieced together from interviews, resurfaced comments, and puzzling artifacts like the 17 magazine page. These two narratives don't replace one another. They coexist, each gaining strength for completely different reasons. What drives the official version is authority. It comes from recognized sources and remains stable over time. Meanwhile, the speculative version thrives on mystery. Every time someone finds a new interview clip, a mismatched date, or an old photo that raises questions, the theory expands. It doesn't rely on confirmation. It relies on curiosity. And curiosity spreads faster than clarity. As online debates grew louder, the discussion shifted from the specifics of a single birth year to the idea of narrative construction. Fans began asking why certain details differ across sources, why certain childhood stories sound vague, and why some milestones appear to shift depending on who's recounting them. In reality, this is normal for any family. Memories vary, stories evolve, and people emphasize different moments for different reasons. But when applied to a public figure, these normal inconsistencies become amplified by millions of eyes looking for meaning. This created a strange tension between what is official and what is speculated, transforming Meghan's early life from a straightforward biography into a layered story filled with interpretations. And that tension set the stage for the next phase of public fascination. Because age is only one piece of the puzzle. When fans tie that speculation to major life events like pregnancies, the debate becomes far more intense, and the theories begin branching into even more complex territory. Once the age debate gained momentum online, it didn't stay contained. The internet never isolates a theory. It connects every dot, relevant or not. And that's when the conversation expanded into one of the most emotionally charged areas of any public figure's life. Major life events, especially pregnancies. This shift didn't happen all at once. It evolved gradually as fans began examining Meghan Markle's public appearances, timelines, and interviews with the same intensity they had applied to the resurfaced magazine page. This created a new wave of online discussion, much of it centered on visual interpretation rather than facts. People started comparing photos from different events, noting changes in appearance, posture, or clothing choices, and treating them like clues. Of course, this kind of speculation is entirely subjective. Different lighting, angles, or outfits can dramatically change how someone looks. But for communities already invested in the overarching mystery, these images became puzzle pieces they felt compelled to connect. At the same time, separate groups online insisted these theories were unfair, intrusive, or simply unrealistic. They pointed out that pregnancy is not a predictable or uniform experience, and that appearances vary widely from person to person. But the presence of strong disagreement only fueled the story further. In internet culture, conflict acts like oxygen. Once two sides form, the debate becomes self-sustaining. As the speculation grew, many users began linking this new discussion back to the earlier timeline concerns, arguing that if one detail felt uncertain, perhaps others did as well. Again, nothing was verified. This was purely fan-driven narrative building. But what made this especially compelling to mystery-seeking audiences was the emotional weight of the topic. Pregnancy is deeply personal, and when paired with public scrutiny, it takes on an almost cinematic quality. The contrast between official announcements and online theories widened the divide between the two narratives even further, setting the stage for a dramatic next chapter. Because once speculation touches something this sensitive, the reaction becomes louder, fiercer, and far more unpredictable. As the theories expanded beyond timelines and into personal life events, the online world split into distinct camps, each convinced they were seeing the situation clearly. One side believed the discussions had gone too far and argued that celebrities, even global public figures, still deserve privacy regarding deeply personal matters. The other side insisted they were simply interpreting public information, analyzing interviews, photographs, and statements released by Meghan and the royal institution itself. This clash of perspectives transformed the debate from a niche curiosity into a broader cultural moment. Content creators began weighing in. Journalists addressed the discourse without endorsing any claims. And social media platforms filled with reaction videos and discussion threads that dissected every new development. Rather than calming the conversation, mainstream attention amplified it. Users defending Meghan emphasized that speculation about pregnancy is historically harmful, often rooted in misunderstanding and bias. They highlighted the emotional toll such speculation can take on anyone, celebrity or not. Meanwhile, those exploring the theories maintained they were questioning narratives, not attacking individuals. They framed the discussion as a form of unpacking public storytelling rather than challenging Meghan's character or personal truth. But what truly escalated the tension was how people interpreted silence. Meghan did not respond to the speculation, and neither did her sister, her father, or the royal family. For some, this silence proved nothing and meant nothing. For others, it acted like an empty page onto which they projected their own interpretations. And because both sides felt justified, the conversation began consuming itself. Every new interview Meghan gave, every documentary appearance, every photograph from a public engagement became material for either confirmation or dismissal of the theories, depending entirely on who was analyzing it. This tug-of-war between empathy and suspicion, privacy and public curiosity, set the stage for an even deeper split. The rise of two completely incompatible narratives that people online began treating like rival realities. By this point, the Meghan Markle discourse had grown so large that it stopped functioning like a single conversation. It had split into two parallel realities, each shaped not by facts alone, but by the emotional investment of the people participating in it. In the first reality, supporters followed the official narrative, the one documented through credible publications, royal announcements, and Meghan's own words. This version presented her life as consistent, straightforward, and no more unusual than any other celebrity's journey. To these observers, the speculation felt not only unfounded, but unnecessary, because the available public information was clear enough to form a coherent biography. In the second reality, the internet's reality, people saw a mystery worth solving. They believed the combination of Samantha's early comments, Thomas's recollections, the resurfaced 17 magazine page, and the photo-based pregnancy debates created a pattern too strange to ignore. For many in this camp, the story wasn't about Meghan as a person. It was about the possibility of a constructed public image. They examined every inconsistency, no matter how small, as part of a larger puzzle. Neither side was willing to budge. The more the official narrative reaffirmed itself, the more the mystery-driven narrative dug deeper. And because both narratives relied on emotional truth rather than definitive proof, neither could easily overpower the other. This dual reality phenomenon is common in modern celebrity culture. When someone becomes global, their image stops belonging solely to them. It becomes a projection screen for public fantasy, doubt, admiration, and suspicion. Meghan Markle had become that screen, one half reflecting her own story, the other reflecting the internet's assumptions. These parallel narratives created a kind of cultural stalemate, one that set the perfect conditions for what would come next. The search for anything at all, that could shift the balance between the two sides. When a narrative reaches a stalemate, the internet doesn't stop, it escalates. By this stage, the discussion had spread from casual commentators to more dedicated communities that thrive on analyzing every detail of a public figure's life. These groups didn't rely on new information. They re-examined the old. They replayed interviews frame by frame, cross-referenced dates from unrelated events, and built archives of quotes, photos, and documents to support their theories. Of course, none of this amounted to proof. But to the people participating, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about uncovering patterns they believed others had overlooked. The act of investigation became its own form of entertainment, part detective work, part storytelling. Some community members focused on the timeline inconsistencies, building elaborate charts, comparing alleged birth years, school dates, and early acting roles. Others focused on visual analysis, interpreting Meghan's public appearances through the lens of their own theories. Still others attempted to analyze family dynamics, comparing different interviews from Samantha and Thomas to identify what they considered contradictions. Online creators, fascinated by the traction these discussions generated, began producing long-form videos dissecting the theories. These videos didn't endorse any claims. They simply walked viewers through the logic of the speculation, which was enough to keep the conversation alive. Meanwhile, critics pushed back even harder. They accused the theorists of reading too deeply into coincidences, misinterpreting casual remarks, or disregarding the emotional complexities of real families. They argued that treating a celebrity like a puzzle to be solved was unfair and even harmful. But paradoxically, the backlash only intensified the curiosity of those already invested. People felt they were uncovering something controversial, something others didn't want questioned. And whenever people feel like they're digging into forbidden territory, whether true or not, their commitment to the search grows exponentially. This obsessive investigative phase laid the groundwork for the biggest shift yet, a moment when the narrative stopped being about Meghan herself and became a broader commentary on celebrity storytelling. By the time the theories had expanded across social platforms, podcasts, and long-form video essays, something unexpected happened. The discussions stopped being solely about Meghan Markle. It became a mirror reflecting how modern culture interacts with fame, narrative, and uncertainty. People weren't just debating her timeline or her family interviews anymore. They were debating what it means to be a public figure in an age where information is endless, contradictory, and instantly amplified. Meghan's story, or rather the conversation around her story, became a case study for how the internet constructs alternate realities when presented with ambiguity. For supporters, the controversy illustrated how easily a public figure, especially a woman in the spotlight, can become the target of invasive speculation. They saw it as proof that online culture often places unrealistic expectations on celebrities to provide perfectly consistent life stories, even though real lives rarely operate that way. For skeptics, the saga represented something entirely different, a belief that public narratives are curated, managed, or selectively shared, and that questioning them isn't malicious, it's rational. To these individuals, inconsistencies invite curiosity, not cruelty. And then there were the observers, caught in the middle, fascinated by the drama, but not committed to either side. They treated the unfolding discussion like a serialized mystery, watching each new interpretation as if it were an episode in an ongoing documentary. The deeper truth is that Meghan Markle's story, whatever one believes, reveals how modern fame functions less like a biography and more like a collaborative narrative constructed by millions of people. Fans, critics, media outlets, and family members all contribute pieces, and the public arranges them into the version they find most compelling. This means the mystery will never fully end, because it was never just about facts. It was about interpretation, perception, identity. And as long as two competing narratives continue to exist, the debate will follow, evolving, reshaping, and resurfacing every time a new detail, a new interview, or a new rumor reignites the public imagination.